This is a 3D model of the exterior of the original Gold's Gym that was done over 10 years ago. Every single one of the Gold's Gym shots I'll show you in this video were done over 10 years ago. The exterior was a relatively quick mock-up to test out some 3D renderers. For this particular shot, I used the standard renderer in 3D Studio Max, and it doesn't have the realistic look that advanced renderers have when light and color are bounced back from object to object. Today, if I wanted to, I could make a very realistic tour of the original Gold's Gym, complete with equipment, the train engine blueprint murals on the walls, and even characters from Pumping Iron, given that I can sculpt humans pretty realistically. With this recent statue render I made in ZBrush and rendered in Blender, you can see the much more realistic look and more accuracy a physically based renderer gives you. In the previous shots of Gold's Gym, I was using a variety of lights. In this shot, there are no lights. The environment around the statue, the sky, the water, the buildings are basically mapped to the interior of a sphere, and they're bouncing light and color onto the model from every conceivable angle, and that makes the statue look like it fits into its environment. The light sources are basically the lighter areas of the environment. This tiny image was another 10-plus-year-old render of Gold's Gym's interior, except this was done using an earlier physically based renderer plugin called V-Ray. I'll blow it up in a second, but I only rendered it back then as a 252 by 115 pixel, very small image, because more realistic renderers back then took forever to render, so I tested out a tiny image which didn't take nearly as long. Watch the difference right there after I enlarged the tiny image with Gigapixel, which uses AI to interpolate pixels. In other words, it uses guesswork in order to maintain detail as it dramatically enlarges the image. So it's not perfect, although AI is going to get much, much better. This was a 10-frame animation for a GIF, and this too was rendered with a real-world physics renderer in V-Ray, and you can see that it looks a lot more realistic than the initial animation I showed with all the red buildings. Plus, this more accurately represents the exterior of Gold's at the time Pumping Iron was filmed. The color scheme was red, white, and blue. These clips were tiny tests that I just enlarged within Premiere, the editing program, and that's why they look blurry. This was an interior shot with dumbbell racks. Here's a lightened version so you can see more of the detail. This was a shot from the back of Gold's Gym. I don't know why I have a garage there. I don't know if they had one there in the 70s or if they just added parking within the building later on. Maybe someone watching this knows that they had indoor parking in the 70s or if they didn't when they made it a garage. This is an overhead shot of the gym from the back, and I extended the garage even further to the right. The rectangular object on the right rear roof is a mattress, and I'll get to that in a second. A series of front shots here. I could take all this to a much higher level now, having had a lot more 3D experience, not to mention a lot better programs available, much quicker, much quicker renders, a lot better renders. The technology is increasing exponentially, and it's only going to get ridiculously better. You can't even imagine some of the stuff that's coming along the bend in this field with AI and automation. Allegedly, the owner of Gold's Gym at the time, Ken Sprague, would let poor gym members live on the roof of the gym. Chime in if you can clarify this, but there was supposedly a mattress on the roof, and that's what I put on the top of the gym. If you look carefully at the top of the mattress, there are 5 containers of Joe Weider's Crash Weight Gain No. 7 powder and a copy of Pumping Iron. I'll zoom in to show more detail, but this was a smaller image where I used a pixel interpolation program for enlargement, which ended up guessing at some of the lettering on the protein cans as it enlarged the image. But today you could create a much more complete, much more realistic and accurate version of all this into an interactive video game, basically, where you could tour the inside, complete with all the equipment, and even have some of the original Gold's Gym members training there, or even put yourself in there. But this was all done over 10 years ago as an exercise, and only a handful of people have ever seen it, and YouTube's algorithms will ensure that that never changes.